Well, let's do Lost River.
Okay.
Because there's a lot to say about
Yeah.
Lost River. Lost River, the debut film of Ryan Gosling. Now, the first time I saw Lost River was at Cannes 11 months ago, where it had its world premiere. And the reception, I think you would kindly say, was lively. Now, it got terrible reviews, terrible reviews, some of the worst reviews out of Cannes I've ever seen. But it did have a serious hardcore of defenders as well, who tended to be younger. And we'll come back to the reason for why I think that might have been the case in a bit. In Lost River, you have it's set in this kind of present day but nightmarish twist on the American heartland. So it's in a town called Lost River, it was shot in Detroit, so somewhere that's been a massive victim of the financial downturn. But the town is also flooded around it, so there's this sense of the Louisiana Bayou and the flooding down New Orleans as well. That's worked in there as well. And you have a single mother who's played by Christina Hendricks, who is desperately trying to provide for her kids and not lose her house. And so she goes to the bank manager, who's played by Ben Mendelsohn, and says, I need a lifeline here. And he says, well, why don't you work in this kind of strange nightclub that I've also set up in town? So he gets her a job at the nightclub, and the nightclub is this weird kind of gothic burlesque place. At the same time, her son, who's called Bones, who's played by a Scottish actor called Ian DeCastcar, is going around stripping copper from the local houses to try and scrape by, help earn a bit of money. Yeah. And he falls into this feud with this local gangster called Bully, who's played by Matt Smith. And we have a clip of some of Matt Smith's typical dialogue from the film now. And this is when we first meet his character.
Look at my muscles, 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 look at my muscles.
It's almost like a nightmare version of an ice cream van. That's what I see.
It's a nightmare version of something. I mean,
of that's what I see of that scene when he's going around with a loudspeaker on the back of this kind of derelict kind of backdrop of Detroit.
Since the film premiered at Cannes, it has been substantially reworked. I think it's lost about 10 minutes of footage in kind of preparing it for release. I think to kind of try and ameliorate these bad reviews, I have to say, I don't think it's done much good. I think Lost River, and much as I love Ryan Gosling as a movie star, and I think he probably does have a good film in him as a director, this categorically isn't it. It's incredibly misconceived from start to finish. The first problem is, it feels as if Gosling is telling us more about the contents of his DVD collection than about himself or about anything he wants to see. And the film kind of borrows images, rather than borrows, I mean, copies and pastes, I should say.
Which he's not scared, he's not hiding.
No. He's very kind of pleased to say that. And I think, if you're a filmmaker like Nicholas Winding Refn, who's worked with Gosling a number of times on Drive and Only God Forgives, Refn is a kind of filmmaker who draws on, David Lynch, and he draws on, Alejandro Jodorowsky and many, many directors. But when Refn does it, you feel as if he's putting his own personal spin on it, and it's unmistakably a Nicholas Winding Refn film. If you cut up Lost River into its component shots, it would look like student filmmakers trying to replicate the shots by Malick or Lynch or Refn or Mario Bava or whoever it is. And the film just doesn't have an original thought in its head. And it's incredibly sad to see a lot of money being spent on a brilliantly talented cinematographer, Benoit Deby, who's shot with Harmony Korine, again, lots of Harmony Korine in here, and Gaspar Noé, lots of Gaspar Noé too. But there's nothing personal in it at all, it feels. And, you're just watching someone try to replicate the look of films by filmmakers that he loves.
See, I have to disagree, because I'm not as knowledgeable on you in terms of the world of cinema, and kind of, I know Terrence Malick, and I know some of the other people you're mentioning. And for me, watching that film, it's kind of like, I see that there are different kind of colorscapes to the film. And for me, when I'm watching it, I kind of drawn, that's an emotion I should be feeling with regards to the colorscape that's around that. The characters I thought that he created, because he's written this as well. And, it could have been easy for him, I think, to either write it and not direct it. And also the question, I'm sure, came up about whether he should be in it or not as well.
And it's interesting that Ian DeCastcar's character is very, very much groomed to look like Ryan Gosling of 10 years ago. I mean, that just strikes me as the kind of role that Gosling could have done in his sleep. But the problem with
Ian does it brilliantly. I think he's incredibly kind of watchable and personable, and he doesn't do a lot, but the little that he does, for me anyway, he pulls me in, and I kind of like, you know, you feel the anger for that character, you feel the desperation for that character as well.
I'll agree with you that he doesn't do much. But, you know, when I was queuing for the film, no, it was queuing for a separate film at Cannes the first time around I saw it, there was a really young guy behind me in the queue who was talking to some friends, and he said, you know, guys, until last night, my favourite film of all time was Only God Forgives, and then I saw Lost River. And you kind of, you know, my instinct was to kind of turn around and kind of shake him by the shoulders and say, you know, you need to go and see the films that these are inspired by. You know, go back to Malick, go back to Lynch, go back to the Giallo by Mario Bava, that a lot of these kind of nightmarish nightclub scenes are seen on, and you'll see where he's just kind of taken it from, and you'll see how soulless and you know, box ticking an exercise this film is. The other problem with it is because it's set in this incredibly poor, deprived community, but the film looks very expensive, and it has the sense, and I've got no doubt that this is not Gosling's intention at all, but that he has rocked up with his showbiz friends from Los Angeles to kind of see how poor people live for a while. And, you know, there are real Detroit residents in the film. They pop up, you know, to chat to the characters in these kind of freewheeling, very kind of improvisational feeling scenes. And there's something almost kind of distasteful about the way that they're kind of sprinkled on like a little bit of salt and pepper just to kind of keep it real and keep it edgy. And then when the story needs to progress, sweep these people off screen. Now, I gather that Gosling actually went up to Detroit and shot on a small camera, just went around and shot these residents first up, and kind of to get a feel for the environment and to talk to these people and hear the way that they spoke and the way that they kind of talked about their experiences up there in order to then write the film. That's the film he should have made. You know, go out there with a small budget, you know, with one camera operator, with maybe like one actor, two actors, and learn the craft, you know, learn the discipline, or write for someone else, or try a small, you know, a short film first. This feels like massively overreaching. I think the film is a total catastrophe.
If you hadn't, if he'd kind of done it under a pseudonym, okay, so if you didn't know that it was written and directed by Gosling, do you think you'd have a different opinion?
Yeah, I think I would have been harder on it, because I was willing Ryan Gosling to do well. You know, I love Ryan Gosling, and I think, as I say, I think it's a good film. And you have to look at the way that Ben Affleck's films as director were received to see that it's not this kind of weird critical envy. You know, Ben Affleck is a pretty solid director. You know, Gone Baby Gone, fantastic debut. The Town was just a terrific kind of crime movie, and you know, obviously
he didn't go straight in there though with writing and directing though. Affleck, do you know what I mean? He wrote first.
He worked his way up to it. Exactly.
Yeah, he worked.
That's what Ryan Gosling should have done. And this is just kind of horribly overreached. And it's like, you know, watching, I felt like Ian Malcolm, you know, sitting in a Jeep at Jurassic Park, watching this kind of catastrophe unfold in front of him. And you think, you know, science should have told us this. You know, he realised that he could do this, and he didn't stop to think whether or not he should. You know, he stood on the shoulder of geniuses. I'm not going to do the Ian Malcolm speech off, you know, in full, but he stood on the shoulder of geniuses, and then before he knew what he had, you know, he'd patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox and was trying to sell it, and it was too much. You know, I would love to see Ryan Gosling succeed as a filmmaker, but this is not a success.
I completely disagree with you on that. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. It's not perfect. There are flaws to it, but I think in terms of the characters that he's created and the performances, I mean, Ben Mendelsohn as well was menacing, and Saoirse Ronan, who I haven't even mentioned as well, I think is quite brilliant in it as well. And I love the fact that he's kind of pulled on, you know, a couple of really good young British actors as well that he's put in there as well. It would have been really easy for him not to kind of go that route as well. The good thing about it as well, in terms of it's out there for everyone to see, in terms of it's not just a cinema release, it's on demand as well. So if you do want to kind of agree or disagree with Robbie or I, it's straight away they're available after the show. So.
Yes, look, I mean, I can give you, if people want to get in touch from Facebook, I can give you a list of things to see instead of Lost River, or after having seen Lost River, to see where the influences came from.
Well, that's the
if
thing.
It's a springboard into great kind of American independent cinema for people, that's going to be great.
Two springboards: a springboard for Gosling in your eyes making a better film, and also a springboard in terms of a new generation discovering those films that you think that he's, you know, that you say he's completely lifted. So there's a good to come out of what you think is a wrong.